If you live on planet Earth, you may have heard that the 8th and final season of Game of Thrones kicked off last night on HBO. 30 million Americans were estimated to have tuned in.
For the uninitiated, Game of Thrones is one of the most critically acclaimed and expensive shows on television.
6 days a week, Professor Tom's is a New England sports bar, but on the 7th day, the channel changes to HBO.
We were the most illegally downloaded show in the world, and one episode was illegally downloaded 4.8 million times.
Your husband, David, is one of the executive producers of Game of Thrones. So he even keeps this from you?
Well, it's a little bit like being married to someone in the CIA or something, except for not as important.
I'm sorry, do you just have Game of Thrones on cue, ready to go?
Pretty much, yeah.
Can I live here?
Yes,
What's
you're
happening?
welcome. Did you see this week?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
That's Brad Pitt bidding with you here now. Brad Pitt is bidding on this to watch Game of Thrones with you, Emilia Clarke.
But unbelievable, right? I mean, this is the greatest show on television.
I agree with you.
Well, I actually got to sit in the Iron Throne.
You sat on the Iron Throne?
Sat on the Iron Throne.
Is this correct? Did you bring evidence of this? That you
I
actually sat?
have a photo, yes.
I want to see you sitting. There you are.
Yes.
Favorite Game of Thrones character?
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah?
Game of Thrones on tonight. I'm trying to get home and watch that.
Today, you were talking to Counselor to the White House, Kellyanne Conway. You asked her about the Game of Thrones-inspired poster that's sitting in front of the president during yesterday's cabinet meeting.
But does the president watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, I'm not aware of that. This is your Game of Thrones party last night.
That's last night.
Yes.
What's up? Game of Thrones, though, dude. Yo, you all caught up? Bro, I totally binge watched that whole thing last night, dude. Yo, it's cold-blooded up in Westeros, dude.
What an honor this is.
Thank you so much.
I respect the hell out of the men of the Night's Watch. I mean...
And by the way, this show, it is always amazing when a show like this becomes it. Like everybody's watching.
I'm obsessed with Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, man.
Game of Thrones.
Principales personajes de Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. It has a lot of nudity, which I fast forward through to get to the chopped off heads.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Protect the wall!
Hello, man. How you doing? I'm very well. How are you, okay?
Will be the next king or queen of Westeros.
I do love Game of Thrones.
I just watched it last night for the first time. No. I watched the whole series.
It's great, isn't it?
Glenn would be, or Dennis would be Jon Snow, because of the hair.
The mega hit Game of Thrones.
You know from Twitter you're a huge Game of Thrones guy.
Yes.
Can you believe that finale?
Cried.
Did you?
Like a baby.
For the watch. For the watch. For the watch.
Hi, Brian. I'm the boring storyline of the fat guy that's watching that girl.
You want a whore, buy one. You want a queen, earn her.
Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor. It can never be used to hedge.
There are no men like me. Only me.
I can see everything. Everything that's ever happened to everyone.
In winter, we must protect ourselves. Look after one another.
And the snows fall and the white winds blow. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
I do know some things. I know I love you. I have to go home now.
I'm no ordinary woman. My dreams come true.
Dracarys.
You haven't been paying attention.
Hey man, how you doing? Good to see you, man.